All right, I am joined by Kailey Skinner and Patel from Biscuitville. They are a customer of Skook, so I'm very happy to have you here. Again, this is our live and in-person podcasts that we're doing at DevLearn, so I'm very excited to have you guys here. I appreciate you taking some time out to speak with us. Before we get started, maybe you could just talk a little bit about what you each particularly do at Biscuitville.
So my name, as you said, my name is Patel. I am a Senior Director of Training and Development and Operations Service.
Okay.
I've been with Biscuitville for 5 years.
Nice.
Started out in operations and transitioned into training.
Oh, we might need to talk about that a little bit. That's great.
Yes.
And then I am the instructional designer. So I do all the content creation and write all the training content. I've been with Biscuitville 3 years on the 11th.
Okay.
So just about to have my anniversary. And I came over from education, so I've been making that switch. So it's been interesting.
Yeah, that switch from like higher ed or K-12 or
I was teaching high school at the time.
Yeah, that transition to corporate learning is a whole other thing.
Yes.
Interesting. And for those, because you guys aren't necessarily completely nationwide, so
Yes.
somewhat regional. So for those folks who aren't familiar with Biscuitville, maybe just a quick description of who you guys are.
Yeah, so we are very regional. So we have 85 locations. We're in Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina. We serve mostly focused on breakfast, open 5:30 to 2 every day.
Oh.
We focus on fresh local ingredients, so we don't have anything that's pre-made that we're just kind of throwing in a microwave and putting it together. But it is quick service, so we really focus on having local products that are right in our backyard that we bring into all of our restaurants.
Gotcha. And I bet those of you listening who are local,
Yes.
Yes.
I bet. No, that's great. And I always love talking to our customers who are in that space in the food industry, because it's just the dynamics of it are just fascinating to me. And because as an industry analyst for the past 12 years, a lot of the discussions I have are about these generic organizations, which really in people's minds, it's a bunch of people sitting in an office building at a cubicle at a desk, and you try to create these strategies and these goals around that idea. But to me, these kinds of organizations are just fascinating because it's dispersed and you've got all these different types of roles and people who are not working at desks, and they all have learning and development needs just like anybody else. But then you add all these extra layers of complexity. And really, to me, the restaurant industry is, I feel like higher level than some of these others where I think some people don't think that way, right? They think of the food industry and it's like, well, that's just that. But, you've got that sort of high turnover, which is just by its very nature is what it is. And just the speed with which you have to hire people, get them running, items come out, menus change, things like that. So the work you guys do is fascinating.
Yeah. We have an even harder issue because our day is so short too. Since we do close at 2.
Sounds great to me.
Yeah.
But
with only 8 hours of operation,
we
don't have a whole lot of time to actually sit and train people. So
right.
And that's a little challenging.
Compressed time, yes.
Yeah, especially, that's a challenge that a lot of hourly places face, because you can't say, oh, okay, here's your shift. And now when you're at home, look up this or read that. You can't do that. So what are some of the things that you guys are working on from an L&D perspective, for training in this kind of environment? Is there anything like a program that you're currently working on, or something maybe that you've recently done that you're particularly proud of?
So we had just completed our implementation for the field, which was a great success. It's been adopted by the field. One of the things that we're now going back and doing is a monthly focus on one food topic and one safety topic. So just to kind of bring awareness to a specific food item and a specific safety topic item. So really spending that time to kind of dig deeper into one place to kind of bring just that piece of information for just 30 days to the forefront of everyone's mind, trying to help reduce workers' comps, but also to increase food quality and things like that.
Yep.
And then we want to track, does that help reduce slip and fall accidents, or does it help increase, our guest satisfaction in a particular area? So that's one thing that we just started implementing.
Yeah, that's great news, because we talk about this all the time, is what are we measuring? How do we know it's working? And, you know how it is. It's very easy, quote unquote, to capture completions and smile sheets. It's almost a given.
Yeah.
And it's important to have that. But the fact that you can say, oh no, this business thing that we're after, not only are we supporting our people, but this business thing we're after is happening. I think that's fascinating. So, and I don't know if you can answer this, but that kind of learning that you're delivering out to the field, how are they interacting with learning? Are they doing it on their phones? Is it a kiosk? Is it a...
Mostly their phones or a tablet. All of our
Yeah.
stores have iPads.
Okay. So like there's a store tablet that they
They have
can
3.
access. Yeah. Okay.
Each store has 3 tablets. Yeah.
But there are locations where they're using their own phones. And I think that's great. I think it's been strange how long it's taken organizations to be okay with people using this device that everybody has on them all the time.
Correct.
And I guess there's always the fear of, well, we don't want them on their phones while they're working, and they're tempted to do other stuff. But I think that's just kind of an outmoded thinking. So I'm glad to hear that. You see a lot of adoption, like people are, yep, I'll use my phone for this.
Yeah, no, we monitor them. I mean, they're not allowed to use the phone while they're working.
Right.
But when they're actually sitting down for training, they use their phone. They prefer to actually use their phone over the iPads because they're so familiar with the phone.
Right.
It saves their password. They don't have to worry about it, things like that. So
yeah, it eliminates so many extra steps, right?
Correct.
And do they, are there opportunities for them to sort of use it in the moment, like a menu item they can look up? And so how are you doing that? Is it they look it up? Do you guys use QR codes yet, or?
So we have a really extensive resource library.
Okay.
That we have housed in Skooks. We have thousands at this point pieces of information in there. And so that can be accessed pretty much at any point. We haven't gone into QR codes for specific things at this point. Being QSR, we still do a lot of printing of visual.
I was going to ask that. Do you have a lot of like wall hanging stuff?
Not as much as we used to. We pulled a lot of things off the wall.
So all our recipes are now we're sharing it or storing it in the SharePoint.
Okay.
And it's clickable, even though we might have 200 recipes, but on the table of content, they just click on it and it takes you straight to that page. So that's how we're actually training them rather than having those physical manuals that they have to flip through the cards to get to the recipe. Now everything is on the iPad, one click away.
Yeah. Don't have to figure out which color the tab is and flip.
And then they don't have to worry about updating it when it does get updated. No one has to actually go in there, pull out the old one and put a new one in.
Right.
Yeah.
But the nice thing with us being able to access and use SharePoint is that we don't have to worry about logging in.
Right.
So it's just kind of that one less step in the moment. But it does work out really well. But then we do house it also in Scoops so that they do have access to it if they want to go into it.
Right.
So it is everywhere for them. So if they are at home and they want to see it, they can.
How do you handle that? Because it's one thing, you don't want to keep people from learning, but sometimes there are seemingly arbitrary rules that you literally can't.
So we do have geofencing in place.
Okay.
So
For
hourly employees, they're not able to access anything at home.
Got it.
Right. For our salary managers, they can access everything at home.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And so I want to come back to the fact that you come from operations. I think this is great because too often it's hard to make that bridge.
Yes.
I think L&D professionals are really, really good at what they do. I meet so many really fantastic, people, but it's hard to not be sort of siloed or even maybe have blinders on because of I'm really good at this thing.
Yeah.
And really having an understanding of what the business needs. So do you find like that? I mean, it seems obvious to me, but like bringing that, give me maybe examples or thoughts about what you bring coming from that side of things.
Well, I think the transition's easier because you know what goes in day in, day out in the restaurant, right? So when you're creating or when you're coming up with the ideas of how to train, we already knew what works and what doesn't work. The beauty of our department is every single team member in our department comes from an operations background.
Wow. Okay.
There's not a single person that has not worked in operations in the past. So collectively, I think it's a unique group for us because everybody has that. And we hold each other accountable as well. So, Biscuitville, it's unique in itself that training actually lives in the culinary department, not under HR.
That's where it should live for sure. Yep.
Correct.
It's not an HR function.
It is not an HR function. So for Biscuitville, yes, the training department falls under culinary. So when they're coming up with certain ideas, we'll push it back, and I'm like, have you seen our kitchen? Is that going to work?
Right. That's
How many steps do
There's
they have to
17
take?
steps. That's too much.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yes.
No, and that's the thing. That's the insight that a lot of L&D teams just, it's not by design, but they don't have that insight into their operations, whatever it is. Not even if it's a restaurant, just whatever it is that the business is doing, they don't have that insight. So it's always the discussion is, well, you have to find a partner in the business to help you understand. But the fact that you've got this sort of the DNA already in there, and like out of the gate, you guys are coming at learning from that place, right? That culinary, this is what it's about. It solves so many of the problems that already exist for that.
Absolutely.
I love it. So that kind of actually makes me think of something else. I know you guys are relatively small, so it's not as though, you've just got thousands and thousands of people who are moving around, but
A couple thousand.
right. So what I'm wondering is, you said, you got all these people coming from operations. What is it like for someone who comes in new as a new hire? And so obviously you want to train them for that job, but how soon do you at all sort of open their eyes to the possibilities of what they could do there?
Oh, we do that day one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have a welcome video on it's our very first video that they see. We actually talk about their career path and their possibilities.
Perfect.
We think it's really important that they understand that we really are striving to promote from within. Our goal is 70-30, 70% internal promotions. Versus hiring external. We just know that we can keep people longer if we are internally promoting them rather than hiring externally. So we have that from the very beginning, and then we reiterate that throughout their first couple of days of training. Of just the possibility. And we have a lot of our management right now that has moved up throughout the ranks, and they've talked about it and actually gone. And when we do a new store opening, they'll actually share their stories about, where they started and where they are now.
And one other thing with us is we're a growing brand. So we open 8 to 10 restaurants every year. So with that, we don't have enough trainers in our department. So we actually take existing crew members or managers as the trainers to go open the new restaurants and train them. So what happens is we call our new opening team a NUG, New Unit Growth Team. They're the one that come and travel with us, and they learn so much that 90% of them are either go into the next step or higher up. So far, I think we've had 7 of them got promoted to an operator, or we call our store managers an operator. So 7 of our trainers have been promoted to operators.
Wow. And that's another thing that fascinates me about this particular industry, given that, like I say, it's typically high turnover. And there are environments where it's just like, well, it's high turnover and we just accept it and we're going to train people to do the job and then we'll just hire more people and do this. Whereas the companies that I've talked to that do this day one, here are the possibilities. Retention suddenly is much better and just longer. And look, maybe people aren't going to stay forever, right? That's okay. We understand that. So why not give them all the tools that they need to do really well while they're here, and then go on and do something else? Because for a lot of restaurant industry jobs, that's what those jobs are. They're somewhat transitory, but the idea that I can grow here, but I can also be developed in a way that allows me to take that somewhere else. You guys feel like that? You feel like you're creating brand ambassadors when people leave?
Yeah, and we have some operators that have been with us for
40 years.
Very long time.
Our turnover as far as the management team is concerned is very, very low, especially at the operator level. It is less than 30%, 20, it hovers around 25 to 28%.
I mean, it would be, I know you'd probably have other parts of the business say that, you can't take all the credit for it, but I think it's clear that here's an example of the kind of impact learning can have, right? When you start to elevate it beyond just training, and you start to think about developing, whatever it costs, whatever investment you had to make to take that approach,
Upfront, yeah.
yeah, is nothing compared to what it takes to not have to continually hire new managers or to get the experience that you get of people who've come up from the stores, from operations to do all these things.
One unique thing that we do with our operator trainer and assistant manager as well is not only they go through the 8-week training program, but then we have a review board that they have to pass a review board before they take over a restaurant. We want to make sure that they're fully trained, they're set up for success before we hand them over a key and say, hey, go run a restaurant. So everybody must pass a review board, and if they don't, they go back, depending on what they need to work on, 2 to 3 weeks back into the restaurant for training.
Yeah. Do you find any challenges with variance between like operators, locations with how they want to do things, or does the way you approach it kind of keep everything pretty standardized?
So we only allow certain stores to do training. So we certify only certain locations. So we have a very rigorous 3-day process to certify a store to become a training store.
Got it.
It's a yearly process, and we go in and certify them. And we're there from opening to close for 3 days.
Wow.
It's a very fun 3 days. But once we finish with that process, then they are eligible to start training. And then from there, they have to follow all the rules that we have laid out for them, which includes following the training how we want. But then the AD is also, our area managers are there every single week. And they have their eyes on any operator trainees, assistant manager trainees. They have a heavy involvement in making sure that they're prepared for the review board as well. Wow. So it is important, and we want them to invest their time because they are preparing them.
Right.
And then we do find usually there's not a whole lot of variance.
No.
Well, it's good to hear. I mean, I'm just, again, going by experience talking to organizations that have like a wide variety of operators, a lot of franchisors, right? Yes. So then you have a franchisor that has 3 locations, and then you have one that has 100 locations, and they have very different ideas about how things should be run. And it's really challenging for them to get everybody on board. So I was just curious to hear how that
before we had Skooks, that's how it was. We didn't really have a set. I mean, we had some things that there was no standard necessarily around it, or no way to really monitor that standard in place. And that's one of the things that Skooks was really able to bring when we did start writing that training, is we got rid of a lot of our tribal knowledge that we had in place.
Yeah. That happens a lot in those environments until you can get a handle on it, for sure.
Yeah.
So is there anything that you guys are like maybe planning to do or working on, or that you'd like to do in the future with the team? Like there's anything on the horizon that you can talk about? Oh, good.
So because we were so successful with the field, we are now working on actually writing training and doing the exact same thing with our distribution center. Okay. So we own our own distribution center and facilities. So they are out of our own center. Facilities is at the same location. Yeah. So we're actually going to be developing the same process that we did for the field, coming up with our training in the same way based off of jobs and all the other material that we came up with. So we'll start writing training for them soon. So
that's awesome. About how many people is that in that location?
It's
so distribution center 30? Has between the two, I think it's 65.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a smaller group.
Of course.
No, it's a smaller group, but I mean, it's very important, that we roll it out company-wide, because that was originally our plan anyways, to start out in the field and then go to distribution center and facility. And then the last would be the restaurant support center where our headquarters is. So it'll be in the phases.
Yeah. It's funny from the outside, I almost think the field would have been the hardest one, because of them being dispersed and the kind of nature of it, and then obviously larger group. Yeah. But maybe that's obviously, I think, the right way to go. You sort of figure that all out.
They were the priority.
Yeah, the priority and the impact would have been much larger with the field than, start out at the DC. But I think the way we implemented it, it was a well thought out plan too. We started out with one restaurant, testing everything. Then we went to one area, and then we rolled it out company wide.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So, this is a great story, because I think you guys are very dedicated to, this is something that at Skooks we talk about our our founder CEO Lift Harris talks about this all the time, is it's about connecting learning to development, right? We very often hear the words learning and development used right next to each other. Actually, is almost sounds like one word, right? Learning and development, but they're two different things. And a lot of companies are just doing learning and not development. And in fact, some are just doing training and not even learning. And I feel like you guys represent somebody that's doing, true development, in an industry that I think outsiders wouldn't think that that's happening. I think most people in the industry know what's going on, but I continually run into people who are surprised to hear about how far ahead of the curve some of the restaurant industry folks are when it comes to this stuff. So I love the story that you guys tell. I guess one thing I'll end on, any new states on the horizon, possibly, or is that a secret?
No, not.
Well, eventually we will be going to Tennessee and Georgia as well. But right now our concentration is going towards the Western Carolina.
Okay.
We don't have that many. We're concentrated near Greensboro area and Burlington area. So now we're moving towards the Western Carolina.
Okay.
Yeah,
some towards the east.
Yeah.
A little bit.
And the east.
I have family in outside of Hilton Head, so if you go that way in South Carolina, let me know, and I'll stop by. But I really appreciate you stopping by here and joining me live and in person, because this has been really fun. I don't get to do this very often, so I'm really glad you guys are here.
Thank you for inviting us.
For sharing.
Absolutely.
Thank
All
you.
Thank you so much.